This is your Bible Geeks Daily Download into the book Romans chapters 14 through 16 and Mark chapters 1 and 2.
Recently, our family watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and our kids couldn't understand why Elsa and Indy had trouble letting the Grail go, even when their lives depended on it. After Indy watches Elsa fall into a pit, he finds himself in the same position. Wanting desperately to reach the Grail, he hears his father call to him. Indiana, his father says, Indiana, let it go. As much as he wanted to save the treasured relic, the cost was too high. He reaches up and takes his father's hand, escaping the crumbling cave just in time.
In this week's readings, we'll see that, like Indy, we sometimes have to let go of something dear to us to take hold of what matters more. One thing that matters, one another. At the beginning of this week, we'll finish the book of Romans with instructions about life in the family of God. These chapters show us the problems among the Roman Christians, shedding some light on Paul's goals in explaining the gospel of salvation for all through faith, not through the works of the Mosaic Law. Gentiles and Jews had to learn to live together in harmony, holding to their common faith without letting differing opinions, backgrounds, and baggage separate them.
Monday's reading in Romans 14 teaches us not to judge one another.
And in Tuesday's reading in Romans 15, he commands us to accept one another.
Then in Wednesday's reading in Romans 16, he reminds us to greet one another. The whole chapter displays the love Paul shares with this group as he greets many of them by name. Looking at these brethren in Rome, we might ask ourselves, am I ready to swallow my pride and accept my brother?
Later in the week, we see something else that matters, following Jesus.
This week we start quarter 2 of our reading plan, where we'll go back to some of the early books of the New Testament. We begin on Thursday with the earliest gospel, the fast-paced, action-packed Gospel of Mark. One of Mark's favorite words is immediately. And sometimes reading Mark, I feel like an up-tempo thumping soundtrack should play in the background as the Lord races from town to town, healing and casting out demons as he proclaims his great announcement about God's kingdom.
So on Thursday in Mark 1, we meet 4 fishermen who let go of their old lives to hold on to something more precious, becoming disciples of Jesus. We also see villagers flocking to Jesus, practically breaking down his door to see his wonders and hear his teaching.
What do you make of Christ's authority, his compassion, and his credentials?
What does Jesus consider his mission, and what can you learn from his prayer life?
Friday's reading in Mark 2 focuses on a different cast of characters, scribes and Pharisees, who stumble over everything Jesus does. They think he blasphemes when he claims to forgive sins. They can't believe he eats with tax collectors and sinners. They think his disciples are slackers for not fasting and lawbreakers for picking grain on the Sabbath.
Can you put yourself in their shoes? Why do you think they had such a hard time accepting the Lord?
Looking to Christ's earliest disciples makes me ask myself, is there something I need to walk away from to follow the Lord?
So let's examine ourselves as we read Romans chapters 14 through 16 and Mark chapters 1 and 2 this week. And may the Lord bless you and keep you today.
Shalom.